And we are live. Well, good evening, everybody. This is Josh here at Red Fury Books. I'm really excited to talk about, as my phone yells at you, I'm really excited to talk about the final book of Brian Lee Durfee's Five Warrior Angels, The Lonesome Crown today. And I have a great lineup here. You've seen Usman here already. You've seen John here already. And we have what's going on down there. We have Budget Brian Bell 2. And you see, kind of as an homage, Brian Bell is joining us today, and he's saluting Durfee with his AC/DC and his books and everything. So
yeah,
we
all
are really
published by
excited.
Simon and Schuster's Saga Press.
Yes,
Every single one of them.
We are really excited that you're here, Brian. Brian Lee Durfee himself was originally going to join us. He had reached out after our last live stream and said that he'd love to talk with us about the books. If you haven't heard, Brian's going through a major health crisis right now. He's been in the hospital about 3 weeks, and he wasn't able to. Obviously, he's still in the hospital. We wanted to schedule this discussion before a lot of the details are gone from our minds. So we wanted to schedule this today. We will be hopefully scheduling at some point after Brian gets through what he's going through right now with all of the health issues. Hopefully a full discussion about the entire series. You know, I think the four of us would love to talk with Brian Lee Durfee on that. So hopefully that can happen. So Brian, get well soon. Additionally, we just wanted to say, if you are not aware, there's a GoFundMe that Brian's sister has put together. If you're watching this after the fact, I've go ahead and put it in the description below, and we'll put it in the live stream and the live chat here in a minute. But if you are able to help out Brian, if you're not aware, in the United States, healthcare costs are astronomical, and he's been in the hospital for about 3 weeks. So if you're like me and you've loved his videos, you've watched dozens of them, you can throw him some money on that GoFundMe. If you enjoyed the books like we have, go help out Brian. I'm sure even, $5-10 here and there will help him along the way. So that is in the description below, and we wish him well. And we're going to talk about this book in this series that I'm pretty sure all four of us loved. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, let's do a little bit. I think most of the people that are probably going to be watching this are probably here for the spoiler talk, but let's do a little bit of non-spoiler, just general thoughts about how this series wrapped up from each of us. And just let people know, for those of us, the people that might come to this that want to see the non-spoiler, they probably just want to see what our overall thoughts are. So let's go ahead and just kind of go around the horn and give just some spoiler-free overall assessment of this final book of the Five Warrior Angels. Usman, let's start with you. You had a fantastic review. If you haven't seen it, go check out his review. But what are your just general spoiler-free thoughts about the Lonesome Crown?
Well, the Lonesome Crown was my favorite of the three. I feel like they progressively got better for me. And the Lonesome Crown, it was absolutely epic. What an epic conclusion. The characters, they really come to full fruition. We see their growth, the battles, just the way things wrap up. It was a wild ride. And I have to say, this is the most metal book of the three, in my opinion. Absolutely loved it.
Awesome. John, what's your overall spoiler-free thoughts of Lonesome Crown?
I mean, you know what? I love, I think it was the afterword, I'm not sure if it was this book or another one, but he was telling the story of, just as a working guy putting a carpet in the perennial all-star John Stockton's house, and they got talking about dreams and making dreams come true. Obviously, someone like that, their input would be, amazing. And Brian was like, I've always wanted to write a book. And he's like, what are you waiting for? And Brian went home and started typing that night. So for me, it's such an amazing story because there's nothing he didn't leave out on the field. I mean, this is the perfect example of an artist living out their dream loud. This went to 11, and then it bashed the amplifier for effect. And it was so much going on towards the end. It was body punches from Clubber Lang that wouldn't stop. There were times I got up from the couch. I expect the sofa cushions to be ripped because there was just so much coming at you by the end. It was just such an amazing example of an artist climbing onto that hill and letting loose his barbaric yawp for the rest of us to hear. And I completely respected it for that, and I really dug it. And it was like Usman said, all caps, epic.
Nice. So, Brian, what were your thoughts?
And I agree with both of them. Moving on. No. Okay, folks, I read the book a little bit, a while ago. So my memory today, I'm going to do the best that I can. As far as non-spoilers go on this series, I think this series is really why BookTube is a thing, because I think in some regard, and I'm not going to crap on the publisher, but one thing that I've noticed over the last couple of years is that every booktuber who reads this series comes back with the question, why aren't more people talking about Brian Lee Durfee's trilogy? Because it is so epic in the most insane, bonkers kind of professional level, artistry. Why aren't more people talking about it? And I don't know if that's a publisher thing. I don't know if it's getting it in a retail or not, but this series was designed for BookTube, because I think you'd be really hard pressed to find credible booktubers out there that don't find something that they absolutely love about their series, about this series. And I think that as time goes on, it's only going to grow. And I also think in some regard that because Brian Lee Durfee is a booktuber himself, it maybe takes away a little bit of that awe factor that we sometimes give to authors. And because he's kind of one of us, he's either watching BookTube or he's on BookTube, but he really does deserve to be on that author's pedestal because this work is really, really good. I wouldn't let the length of the series dissuade you in any way. It's highly accessible. I love how Usman, talked about it being metal. It is completely metal. That's why I've got the ECDC shirt on here today. But yeah, I think it's a fantastic series. I'm going to keep talking about it as long as there's a opportunity to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I agree. Everything that's been said. Like Usman, this was my favorite of the three books. I think objectively, The Blackest Heart might be the best book, but The Lonesome Crown was still my favorite book. I mean, it was kind of it's 1,100 pages and it went so fast it almost felt rushed at times. Yeah, but I still loved it. I still gave it 5 stars. I mean, it was just, there was so much in there. But Brian, I do want to talk about the one point you talked about with publishing. I was on a live stream a couple years ago with an author who was published by Tor, and we were talking about publishing in general. And he said that a lot of the big publishers, they publish dozens, if not hundreds of books a year, and they market 3 of them.
Right.
And that's just kind of how the game is, unfortunately. And I agree with you. This is a series that it seems like every single booktuber that talks about this, that's read it, just raves about it. I mean, Matt from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews had some of them in his top 10 of all time.
Right.
Patrick Leo has raved about it. Madison Goodyear's raved about it. Mike has enjoyed it. I don't know if he's finished the 3rd book yet, but I mean, this is a series that just a lot of people just really love. And, you're adding 4 of us to it right now. But there was a discussion on our Fireside Discord about why is there not enough epic fantasy? And I'm thinking,
right,
Durfee.
Yeah. Well, right.
It's epic fantasy. Yeah, it's not 10 series, but it's like 3,000 pages. I mean,
yeah. And I also think that because he's so exceptionally well read, he knows how to write a story. I mean, he's got all the skills that you would need to do this and more. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's there's a lot of things that we'll talk about more when we talk about spoilers here, but I like how it all just kind of came together. We know epic fantasy is always far flung and it's going to converge. And the convergence here, my goodness, truly the definition of epic, metal, whatever you want to call it. I mean, yeah. Durfee does not pull punches. I have a list of kind of like plot points that we'll talk about in the spoiler section that were just kind of some of those like awe-inspiring moments. But, we're still spoiler-free here. If you haven't read this series, I mean, this is epic fantasy. It's very dark. you know, we had some people tap out because of some of the darker factors, but if you're looking for an epic fantasy series that's a bit dark and has a lot of great characters and a lot of great scenes and a lot of awe-inspiring moments, I mean, this is a fantasy series I think so many more people have to read.
Totally agree.
Yes.
100%.
All right. Anything else anybody wants to add spoiler free before we start going through it?
I can say.
Go ahead, Usman. No, you go. You go.
I can say, for sure, like, this is the only book I've read where it's over 1,000 pages, and I didn't know how things were gonna wrap up, like until the last page. Like all throughout, you can be planning stuff. You don't know how. Like things are. I don't even know what to.
Yeah.
Things just go crazy. You can put theories and stuff together. He always leads you down multiple paths. They never and they just completely branch out even more and more until you're like, okay, I have no clue what's going to happen. Let's get to, the final chapter, and then it'll keep you in suspense. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that is 100% true. Like usually, I kind of can tell where something's going. No. No, I mean right until the very end. Even when all the pieces of the puzzle start fitting together, there's still reveals left to be dropped. I mean, there's still shoes left to be dropped, and and just but before we go full spoilers, I do just want to echo what Brian has said. In this country, sometimes when an artist hits a health snag or hits a health problem, sometimes they're not covered as well. I know there's some writers out there in our community. I came from the world of theater. Josh is a musician, and Brian has grown up playing piano as well. So, I mean, everyone knows sometimes, we can get into a place where we're just not covered or protected. So if it's at all possible, I'm sure any amount would help that GoFundMe that Brian's sister has set up.
I wanted to just real quick, I'd been answering some things in the chats because I didn't want to interrupt anybody. But Shad, regarding the audiobook, I know that one of the last videos a couple weeks ago, Durfee did talk about this being completed. So it might not be out yet, the third book, but I think it's about to be released. So that should be soon. So you can enjoy the end of this great series for sure. Okay, well, I guess the last thing, just to echo, the misdirection is another aspect of this series that's amazing. And we talked briefly in one of the other live streams about, Durfee's so well read. And one of the things he's well read in is kind of the mystery and thriller genre. And that kind of shows in some of the aspects of this series, which is really, really cool. So let's go ahead and jump into spoilers. I think I know how to let's see if this will work. There we go. All right.
Hey.
I learned something on this. It doesn't have our name, so I'm just going to keep that up there briefly.
That's fine.
But anyway, let's just start talking about let's talk about initially in the book, something that I liked is because the second book ended with so many the big battle, everybody was kind of spread out. We saw some really interesting combinations of characters, and I'd like to talk about that because what I said when I did my little mini review with my wrap up is that what I liked about it is we got to see different perspective for some of these characters. And we know that when you're reading literature, you often learn more about a character from somebody else's point of view. So seeing new point of views, looking at some of our characters we've seen before, for me was enlightening. So one of the character conversions that I want to talk about that I loved was Spades and Lindhoff. Because I will be honest, I didn't like Lindhoff probably 90% of these three books. I thought he was just this quiet, this kind of whiny little guy that had an inferiority complex for whatever reasons. And then even when the big things happened to him in this book, I still didn't like him. But I liked him the few chapters that he was with Spades. I mean, were you the same thing? Do you feel the same thing about Lindhoff? I kind of like what Spades brought out of that character.
Yeah, definitely when he started spending time with Spades, you could see a a huge shift there in terms of his character. But you know, it's funny because when he goes off with Galt and Delia, you see like Galt obviously takes charge, but then when he leaves and it's just him and Delia, the way that Delia has to take charge, right? Because Lindhoff is just he doesn't have confidence in himself. He doesn't, you know, he's scared, and the way you see Delia taking charge is just like, wow, you realize what kind of a character Lindhoff really is, and the way he thinks. Like you're saying, he's so what's the word? Just no confidence, right? So
Yeah.
I found it interesting. Like I could see how it could be really frustrating seeing a character like that, but I like seeing the growth, the hopefully inevitable growth that a character like that goes through. And yeah, when it was him and Spades, some of my favorite parts of the book were the chapters with him and Spades, just seeing their dynamic and seeing what she brings out of what she brings out of him as a character and the way he grows. I really enjoyed that. And I think Spades is such an interesting, amazing character. You know, say what you want about Spades. She's badass. She's cool. She's a cool character. For sure.
You know what I didn't even really realize until I was looking at the character bios today was that she's only in her 20s.
Yeah.
It didn't occur to me when I was reading the book that she was like within 10 years of most of the characters in the book because she was so seasoned. So, of course, granted, her life experience was probably significantly, you know, impactful for those 10 years in what her character turned out to be. But yeah, I thought also it was an interesting choice that Durfee selected Lindhoff to be the one that was dealing with all the addiction issues as well. And I don't remember if that started with Anna Spades or not, or maybe that's later on in the book. I'll chime in on that one, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to bring that up. I think Lindhoff's journey, right? I mean, he is that unconfident, not confident, in the corner, scarred. You know, I just keep coming back to, like, he seems like a Richard III character when Richard was a boy, you know? And even when he starts getting the confidence, it's fake. You know, it's due to the drugs that he's become addicted to. And his time with Inna Spades, this is what I love about Inna Spades. And a bit of the problem I had with, just me personally, with the end of the book is a lot of these characters, their motivation stemming from their moral sinners seemed to vary wildly from where we thought they were going or where they were going or where they were. Inna Spades was a constant. It might not be a good moral sinner, but she was Inna Spades in every scene she appeared in. So she was rock solid in who she was and what she believed and where she came from and where she thought she was going. And for Lindhoff to spend time with someone like that when he's starting to get this confidence, even if it is synthetic, I think that was huge for him towards the end of the book and what he accomplished and what he did.
But I even think with Anna Spades too, that seeing her with Lindhoff and then seeing her in different combinations with these characters throughout the book, we saw a slightly different side of her. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, she's a straight up psychopath. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
She is chaos in a human being, but there were sides of her. I mean, you would have thought if you put her and Lindhoff together immediately, like she would have just like offed him or dropped him or something, but she stayed with him for whatever reason. And then you see some of the other scenes with her and the way that she dealt with different characters.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning,
I guess it was, she was consistent, but I guess there was just more layers to her that we didn't get to discover until we saw her away from Eros and the rest of that army.
Yep.
In the beginning, like, what's she doing to those young people that she, our cast of characters as young people when they storm the beach with Eros? What does Inna Spades do to all of them? And then she does have a different thing with Lindhoff here at the end. But I mean, she's still very much into Spades. I mean, she just cuts a swath of destruction everywhere she goes.
Yeah, like you see, you get a good idea of who she is, but then she can still do things that kind of surprise you. Like, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I expected her to just off Lindhoff when she was done with him, but that didn't happen. And then at the end, at the very end, right, when she visits the pier. But anyways,
Yeah.
But then even, I mean, Michael brought this up in the chat. I mean, when she kills John Draylen, I mean, first of all, I didn't expect her to last the book.
No.
But I didn't expect her to go so early. But even in this scene, I mean, Spades could have done a lot more carnage. But she just dealt with the one that she wanted to deal with since the beginning of the first book. I mean, I guess it is. I mean, if you think on like D&D terms, I mean, she's straight up chaotic neutral.
Yeah.
You have no idea what she's going to do.
No, but she did John Draylen dirt. I mean, yeah, she could have done more chaos, but as pointed as she was, she did chaos to that character.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. It was early and it was just so brutal. It's like, okay, once again, Durfee was like, don't think you know what's going to happen. Don't think you know who the heroes are going to be. Nobody's safe. Like, it was brutal.
And once again with that scene, just like when she got her ass handed to her by Galt in the first book, it was her own damn fault. She left everybody and she thinks she's, so it's just one of those, like, it's kind of, there are a few deaths in this book that I think were very apt and kind of poetic justice. And I think this is kind of one of them. She didn't even learn her lesson from the first one. Yeah. She's going to go off by herself, doesn't even tell Hawkwood where she's going, and ends up getting killed. And it's just like, well, yeah. I mean, I guess she's consistent.
She consistently had a heightened view of herself, right? She thought she was a bigger player on the board than she ever was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she thought she was one of the 5 warrior angels.
Exactly.
And there's probably some sort of, invulnerability, complex that maybe she had, that maybe she thought she was being watched over by a greater, who knows?
Yeah. Prophecy or destiny.
Yeah, right. Destiny.
Well, let's talk next about one of our favorite characters. Someone mentioned in the chat, so we might as well pivot to one of our lawful good characters, which is Beer Mug.
Beer Mug!
How epic was it? Yeah, so this is like the minute Usman said, like, this book is metal.
Yeah.
I thought of Beer Mug taking down a dragon.
Nice.
I mean, is there anything more metal than that? This dog taking
How
down
many
a
things
dragon?
did Beer Mug take down? Like packs of, when they're in the ice mountains, like packs of these things raining down on him. Beer Mug's got him. It's like he was the goodest good boy.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, I loved him too. I have seen some criticism of it though, where I've read some reviews that say it's kind of the Deus Ex Machina, where here comes Beer Mug to save the day. And, it's a dog that's solving all the big problems. But you know what? It still was great. I don't mind it.
Yeah.
I think the moments that he jumped in, they were never like, oh, this is how it's going to get resolved. It was just like, first of all, you're excited to see Beer Mug. It's a surprise, and it's just they fit. It fit. It wasn't like when I was reading, it wasn't like I was thinking, oh, Deus Ex Machina. It was just, it was enjoyable. That's the main thing. It was super enjoyable, and I agree, he is the real MVP of the series.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of plot armor with that dog, but it's one of those. I mean, I've read things where. From just literary critics and things like that, and editors, where they talk about, you always have to be careful. Like, if you kill an animal, some people will like stop reading your book and they'll never read you again. I've heard that's actually happened with some people in Robin Hobb. Like, how horrible. But this is kind of the other end of the spectrum. Like, we're not going to kill him. He's just going to keep coming back and saving the day.
Over and over. And the thing that got to me was a little bit was the geography. Like, they've traveled like a long way. And
Yeah.
then he just pops up again, you know, and it's
Yep.
like, cool, all right.
There must be more. We'll have to ask Durfee. There has to be a little bit more to Beer Mug than meets the eye.
I think so.
I can see a good like short story or novella with Beer Mug getting somehow
Yeah,
getting
like
into
how
his
he got
mind.
from all the way across the continent.
Yeah. At just the right time.
The Adventures of Beer Mug. I love it.
So we can now kind of just pivot to Fiery Absolution, because that was, you know, a big portion of it. But I mean, I was going to check. I forgot. I was going to check before the live stream. How many pages was that battle that was about 36 hours? I mean, it was at least 200 pages.
It did.
Yeah,
It was
200 or
at least
300 pages.
the last
Yeah.
couple hundred, maybe 250. It was. He wasn't kidding when he said Fiery Absolution.
I mean, I was very impressed with the way he wrote it, because I said it in my little mini review. I'm not a huge, like, if you tell me, oh, this book has this great action sequence or this great battle scene, I'm always kind of like, it's not really my thing at all. But when it's done well, I mean, I really appreciate it. And I think for me, what worked really well is in that whole section, the point of view switched around pretty quickly, and you had quicker chapters. So that helped me. But man, it was still just, I mean, it just kept going.
Yeah.
You know, I thought, I suspected after I got done with The Blackest Heart that Fiery Absolution was going to be kind of the page length equivalent of what we got in the final battle of Wheel of Time, because how much more bonkers could you get than Blackest Heart's sea battle, where they're literally fighting sharks, right?
And mermaids.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And here's the benefit of knowing Durfee the way that we do. You know, he's not going to have the high point of the action in the middle book. So especially when, you know, Fiery Absolution has been alluded to since probably, you know, the first couple chapters of the first book. So completely bonkers, totally bonkers. I've never, ever read a battle sequence like that before. And Josh, I'm with you that if someone's selling me on a book, telling me about the action sequences really is never going to get me all fired up to do it, except for this one. This one, I tell people, you got to read it for this, because nobody's done this like Durfee has.
Yeah, I will say the thing I loved about it was he suspended tension for all of those 200. Like Usman was saying earlier, up to the very end. Up to the very end, you're going, I don't know if they're getting out of this. Like I don't know this. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna, because, and here's the part that I had a bit, and this is just me personally. I tend to be more of an optimist in my worldview. So when I started to see characters like Galt, who I thought were on more of a journey of, more of a heroic journey, right, of redemption, as soon as this Fiery Absolution hit, everyone caved to their basic human bloodlust. Like, I'm going to kill who's in front of me. It doesn't matter, you know. And it's like, when are they going to snap out of this somewhat and group together to save their world? And it just went on and on and on. And people tend to continue to go to the baser levels of humanity, I thought, as opposed to working together and understanding the sameness. So for me, for my personal worldview, even though the characters I thought were on a different journey, that got to me a little bit. But the suspension of tension all the way through of, I don't know if they're getting out of this. Like all the way up to the last few pages, I was like, nah, this is going to end badly for everyone.
I mean, yeah, there's two things I want to kind of talk about that you were talking about. And one of them was Galt.
Yeah.
Because you're right. And that's a great way to put it, because I think I put on our group chat at one point something like, Galt didn't feel right to me, but I think you've hit the nail on the head here, John, that he just reverted back to those baser instincts. And he turned.
I felt every character did. And some you expect, like in a Spades, to get out of her butt out of a crack. She would.
Sure.
But every single one, it's like, guys, someone's got to, you know.
but Galt in particular, he was kind of on this redemptive arc and reunited with his daughter, and then he kills the king and he just goes, goes crazy again. And it was kind of jarring for me. But to your other points, not knowing the ending, I mean, that's the thing that I love about authors like Durfee that are not afraid to get a little dirty. Not afraid to kill a character to further a story. You never know where it's going to go.
No.
And
I never did.
I did love that aspect, especially as I was getting about 150 pages to the end, not knowing how this was going to end.
Right.
And I mean, you can say it ended well. I mean, the book itself ended well, but the action itself, I mean, still a lot of stuff happened before that final last chapter. So,
right. But even the battle's over, right? And there's a semblance of stability and peace. Even at that point, I was like, okay, this is going to end badly. Like when they were all going back to that room where, and it's like, okay, this could all crumble like quick.
Yeah.
So he held it till the very, very end. And I thought that was really amazing.
Yeah, and I thought, well, I want to save the last chapter in the epilogues to last.
That's why I was vague.
For me, was the brilliance of this series in my mind. For me, that's where it went above everything else. So let's talk about some of our other characters. John, in our first live stream, you were Team Doki.
I was actually going to ask about that tonight because I was on the other side of the camera for those, conversations.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting and watching John talk about Team Doki, picking his underwear.
Let me tell you. Team Doki comes with Team Liz Red Hen.
Liz Hen.
And I'm on that team until I die. That's my favorite duo of this whole thing, man. I mean,
I loved Doki in this book. There was a scene where he was like yelling at Hammer Fist or just like going right toe to toe with him, and I'm like, dude's gonna kill you. Will you stop, Doki?
But he actually got to be somewhat effective.
Yeah.
Like at the end of book 2, like this is like, okay, this someone stomp on this ant. Like there's no way, right? But through the journey into book 3, he became somewhat effective. And Liz Hen, I mean, come on, the best mammoth level profanity I've seen in I don't know how long.
I mean, when I look back to my younger days, I thought I had a wide vocabulary in that sense.
Oh no.
No, hers was a bad. I wrote one down in the chat. I should have not this chat, but in our group chat that was so good.
I'm pretty sure she puts the U.S. Navy to shame. I mean, it's beyond what a sailor could do.
Definitely. I mean, Durfee's right up there with Abercrombie as far as I'm concerned, as far as just expletive laced comments that just make you like astounded at how clever they are.
Abercrombie.
I did write down one quote from Crom. Remember Crom, which I'm sure was a nod to Conan's god. Crom describing Liz Hen. What is wrong with this girl who always complains? And that was another one. When the series started, I liked how Durfee had all of it reminded me a lot of this series finishing up. It, in many ways, there are a lot of aspects of it that did remind me of the Wheel of Time. And one of them was how he kind of embraced a lot of the archetypes that, fantasy had for decades, but he did his own thing with them, kind of like Crom. He's kind of an orc. He's not an orc. He's Ogle they're called in this world.
Yeah.
A little different. But I found him hilarious at times.
Oh, yeah. And the fact that he had the black stone in his mouth through the whole thing.
The whole time.
Yeah.
Right?
Sucking on the stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liz Hen was interesting because I felt this way. And as I've watched other, reviewers and read other reviews, it seems like a lot of people have, is that they didn't particularly care for her when we're introduced to her. And over time, she becomes like everybody's favorite character by the end of the book 3. And I think that that's just masterful work on his part, on Durfee's part, because I mean, I legitimately did not. I liked her less than the villains that we were supposed to hate. I was ready for Liz Hen to be the first one whacked. But by the end, I love her. She's great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said in our chat, I said I like Liz Hen as a character, but I think I'd hate her in real life.
Yeah.
Oh
I think she'd
man.
look great on you. I'd feel like Crom, like, what is wrong with her?
What is wrong with this? Could you imagine going on a road trip with Liz Hen?
Oh no.
I'm sure you've packed your students in a bus a time or two, Josh. You had some Liz Hens back there.
Yeah, I make them sit in the back. Well,
and then she needs the toxin, which makes it even crazier.
yeah, right.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
another one. Another person dealing with addiction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he did address that theme very well, for sure. Let's pivot towards a character that in one scene for me became a favorite, and he was our mid protagonist, Nail.
Mm-hmm.
And then the scene where the sentence was Nail punches Glade Chaparral in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately, I was Team Nail.
Yeah.
Right.
Because if there was anyone in that entire series that just needed cold cocked in the face, it was Glade.
Yeah.
When I started talking about the characters earlier, about the different combinations of characters, I think Nail benefited the most from that, especially seeing like Tala, seeing him, and some of the other people that are not these Gallows Haven people that have known him forever, seeing him from a different perspective, seeing Krista's perspective. For me, I started to like Nail a lot more in this book. And then as soon as he punched Glade, I was like, right on. I'm a Nail fan, Team Nail.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the when he got back together with like some of his old people that he had started on that beach with, like Ava Shea, like, to understand the guilt that he'd been carrying for that long, and to see that, I ended up way more Team Nail than I thought I would as well.
Yeah, there's a good point, DK Moon here. Well, we had strong Nail POV in the first book, and Liz was mean to him. So
Yeah.
that's one reason why, our perspective of that character, because it's always, unless it's a first person narrative, you're always getting the characters from whoever the POV is. So to get Nail's perspective, we were only getting it from the other people, and they all kind of treated him like crap. So
Yeah.
Right. And I think when you're reading those opening scenes when they're in the tavern, none of us we all think Nail's going to be our main protagonist throughout this trilogy. We think Liz Hen is basically in it for a scene, right?
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
she's not going to be any big whoop.
Mhm.
And again, here we go with a expectation subversion, Durfee style,
Yeah.
because
And he does it over and over and over and over.
right. And that's why, again, when I was watching your Forgetting Moon recap with your team here, I was like, they don't know. They don't know. None of them.
Yeah.
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 But even his misdirection's so good, though, that even when you think he's told you the answer, you're still not sure.
Right. You don't trust yourself. You don't
Yeah.
even trust
Yeah.
him anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like even in the second book, he kind of revealed that Nail and Krista were the decoys. But even
Right.
then, I was like, I
But
don't
are
know if I
they?
trust you.
Yeah. I remember on Discord, Josh goes, no way, I don't think Krista, I know they said that, but I don't think, they have you, even when he tells you, he's got you questioning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Glade felt to me like the guys, the rich kids at the ski resort
Yes.
in the 80s movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, say what you will about Nail and the first two books. We thought he was going to be so mid. That one punch just redeemed him in all aspects. It was amazing. And going back to what John said about when he meets up with the characters from the first book again, Ava and Jenko, I thought it super interesting how Jenko was like, he basically forgave him. He understood. He was very understanding about Nail leaving them in the first book in captivity, and you could see the pain that, you saw everything that Ava had to endure, and then you saw her reuniting with Nail and that hate that she had built. But the way that Jenko was also left, but you see the way he approached it and his understanding of everything now, maybe given through the circumstances that he was, put through. And it's just interesting the way he was very understanding of Nail and didn't really harbor much hate towards him.
Well, didn't you feel like Usman is like, here's these two, Jinko and Ava, like they went through it, right? They went through it.
Yeah.
And for going through it, they obtained enlightenment. By the end, I felt that as a couple together moving forward into what the mystery of the future is going to be, they are the most enlightened that you have, the most. My heart goes out to the, oh geez, please let it work for these two,
Yeah.
Well, and I can think of a couple of examples that it's almost like this kind of teen, unreturned love themes that we see with Nail and Ava. Basically, it's this unreturned affection. So he basically doesn't save her and Jenko, and in some degree with Tala and Lindhoff as well, because she's kind of leading him on a little bit, and then he's not really at all, and kind of affects how his adolescent mind seems to want to get the better of everybody for it. So yeah. I think it's kind of, I don't know. I remember being that age and kind of thinking in those terms, like,
it's so perfect. It's so perfect because think about it. Ava Shea and Jinko, they just want to be Glade Chaparral. They just want to be the big people on campus and be the wealthy people of the town and be the trendsetters. And, I'm going to do what I have to do to marry this person. And it's all about what note goes in whose locker and that kind of thing. They're children. And by the end, they've had such a journey. Not only are they adults, they're enlightened to the point where I can look at another human being that's done me wrong to that level and forgive. I just thought the whole journey of those two people I thought was really special.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk next about, I think I alluded to it in my review, is kind of the big reveal is basically that the Valle have been manipulating everything, and it's been like 1,000-year con. Talk about the long con.
It is a long game.
I loved that reveal.
Love it.
Okay. We're all on board with that?
Oh, for sure.
Love it.
Because I could see somebody feeling disappointed in it and thinking that it kind of lessened a lot of the other things going into it. But knowing that they were on all sides, they were writing all of the different sacred texts, they were just manipulating all of it from behind the scenes, for me was such a brilliant reveal.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I love that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
We had a little bit of a teaser. I think it was in the epilogue of the first book when the statue's ears had been sanded off.
Lindhoff climbed up. Yeah.
Right. So we knew something was up, but we certainly didn't know that this thing went back centuries or a millennium.
Talk about a long con.
Right.
Yeah.
1,000 years. Truly.
Yeah. But think about the level of commitment to incorporate this 1,000-year tradition, to start this tradition to blow Shroud of the Valley. Was it on the tree or was it something like that?
Oh,
just for fiery absolution.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But I do think that's like some people say, oh, it's dark, but it's not grimdark. It's like, guys, I think this is pretty darn grimdark when you think about, faith being co-opted to that point, where people are going to draw strength from and have drawn their traditions from and have based their moral center off of for 1,000 years. And then it just turns out to be
all fake,
a shadow puppetry just so you can all burn in fiery absolution. Like, I can't think of a more dark, nihilistic take, like that's out there.
Yeah. And I guess the one thing the reason I thought about how some people may not love that being the resolution is it kind of eliminates things like this. The Brethren of Mia, which was so big in the first book, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
No,
You know,
none of it
whether
does.
you're
None of it
Rajal
does.
or whatever.
They made it all up.
None of it matters.
None of it matters.
But
None
I
of it
think that was
matters.
his point. And I love that aspect of it. I also loved in this book, before and after that big reveal, is just I felt like he kind of brought back together the big theme of the series is that it was a holy war.
Mhm.
And we had all of these different beliefs, and you saw so many of the different characters discussing and arguing and, you know, so much about belief. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I mean, a lot of people have done it before, but there were, I don't know, just certain scenes. It was just interesting because you had kind of different kinds of believers, and then you had different non-believers in there, and people whose faith had changed. And I found those discussions really great. And if there's one thing that for me was a little detraction from this book, it felt a little rushed. And I think part of that was turning it into 3 books from 5.
Right.
And I would have loved to have some of those moments kind of just a little slower for me.
Right.
I
And I
love
think,
that.
I think, you know, regarding that, you know, he's talked about how he didn't leave any plot elements out and he was able to get it in there. But I think that for us as readers, it's nice to be able to take a little bit of time and digest a book. And, you know, if there were more clear breaks, I think in maybe books 2 and book 3, and maybe they were separated into, you know, the first half, book 1, the second half, book 2, like something like Shogun has done or other, you know, big books like that, it might have felt a little bit different and to break up the books a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what they would have been like in 5 books. I mean, we'll never know, but
Right.
We'll never know. We'll never know. But it's like, you know, the Heidi had she can't be here because she was watching a hockey game or doing something with her husband. But I think she had the first comment on the whole stream about let's just talk. There's a bit of cosmic horror in here.
Yeah,
there is.
Because the valet are others to the point where they are from other, like, you know, like the underground that they're coming up from. It's not, you know, Tolkien's underground. It's like another dimensional aspect of, it's kind of like a cosmic horror thing. Like these things that can last for that long and lay in slumber for that long to play this long game. I mean, I just love that little bit of, it's like, oh, that's such an amazing subversion of what we're used to seeing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I think it would be a great, you know, whenever you do get a chance to talk to Brian, to talk about those themes of manipulation and using, you know, religion as a way to get everybody fired up, so to speak, you know, pardon the pun, but using this created religion purely for the aspect to manipulate events. And I think,
drugs.
Remember
where the drugs came from.
Right.
Yeah, you know, going back to what you guys said, I will go on record right now and say that this book solidifies the series as Grimdark. I'll have to say.
Daniel was saying the same thing. I mean, I know we've had some people in book 1, book 2 going, "Oh, it's grim, but it's not Grimdark." It's like I'm on it. I'm with you, Usman. For me, and I've read Abercrombie and some other things trying to catch up, and it's like this is every bit as Grimdark, I think, in its themes and its the way it treats humanity's travails and you know, foibles.
I think that it gets a little tricky sometimes when we try to define these subgenres because everyone does have different definitions. You know, dark epic fantasy for me also works. Where things like more kind of a narrower scope that isn't on multi-continents and everything else that reduces epicness sometimes feels more grimdark because it's a little bit more centered in a city or something of that nature. But yeah, I think it gets difficult.
It is dark.
It is
dark.
I think we can all agree it's dark and violent and really crappy things happen. But masterfully written. So
yeah. Well, I say that because for this one, it's the character work was different. The character work was a lot of conflicting stuff with the characters, and it wasn't clear, like, who was really, really good and who was really, really bad. Like there was some blending there. That's why I say with this book especially, you know. But yeah, dark fantasy, grimdark.
Right.
It's that.
I'm just glad we don't end up with the fate of the prince.
Or Eros.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
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 Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, that was
Wow.
That guy got the Pierce Brown treatment.
but
So,
how
no spoilers on Dark Age, but yeah.
how fitting was that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
that
that was
talk about poetic justice.
for me. That was not subverted, right? Like we've been waiting for that character to get nailed up
Right.
for 3 books. You know, yeah.
Wow. From
Look
Harry
at that
Potter-
comment. That's 2 ends of a spectrum. We got
Yeah.
one author who's afraid to kill anybody, and another author who's just going to kill just about everybody.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great. So yeah, this is a good point here. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's like all the way to like nihilism, but that's a very, very good point. Because all of the beliefs were just, you've been conned for 1,000 years.
Yeah. And it
we
doesn't
did this
matter
on purpose.
It doesn't matter if you're the brethren or the, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And, I think he's still, obviously pre-health issues was talking about, he was, also continually writing, now. And I wonder if it's in this universe or if it's something else completely, because there's still more story for sure.
Oh yeah.
In this universe.
I'd love to see a prequel.
Oh, I'd love more. from
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. I want more of the Valet because
Yeah, like a Black Dougal,
Yeah.
those could be a great series.
And what a great character that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Black Dougal was a great character.
Yeah.
That reminds me of when Borden and what's her name, Crystalwood, and them are traveling from Sorcier to Amadon, and the way they're questioning, like, is this Black Dougal? Is that Black Dougal? Like these characters they meet, that old man that they ran into was Black Dougal.
Yeah.
That was terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't even know. And like the person that trained them, or at least Crystal would.
Yeah.
Can't even
It felt a little bit, and I forget what they're called, but in the Song of Ice and Fire, the guys with the masks that can change their faces all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. The face dancers.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was that was great. All right, let's segue to another part of poetic justice. Stefan killing Saita. That one was another one that really came out of nowhere for me. You may recall at the end of the second book, she was my favorite character.
Yeah.
Because there's just more that meets the eye, and we saw a lot of it here, and I still liked her as a character. I still liked the Valet. I just found them very intriguing, and the fact that we didn't get POVs, I think, added to the luster. Kind of like Animander Rake and Malazan. He's this very enigmatic figure because you don't get in his head at all. Same thing with Saita, but it was kind of fitting. As much as I did not like the Stefan, probably the only plot line I didn't like in this book was the Stefan kind of reborn thing. Him killing her, I thought was surprising, but it was so well done when it happened.
Yeah. I don't know if I was a big fan of the zombie Stefan either. I kind of liked, well, I mean, it's weird because I kind of like the hopelessness of his death, and to bring him back was just like, but I mean, bringing him back was even more hopeless because the state he was in. So
Right.
But I did, there was a bit of poetic justice when he was the one to finally get the bow back and do her in.
Yeah,
But
I mean, that to me softened the fact that I was not enamored with that whole plot line with him and what was going on. Every time we got to that plot line, I kind of zoned out a little bit because it just wasn't as interesting to me as everything else. But then at the end, and then like there's a little bit in the epilogue we'll talk about a little bit here. But
for that plot line, Josh, did you like more? Because I found myself liking more as opposed to that plot line where the Ogles there were like in on it and knew what was going on. I like the plot line of like, man, everything has been aligned. Even like the Crom that has the stone in his mouth that thinks he's doing the big thing by moving the chosen one to where the square he needs to be.
Yeah.
Nope, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, even all of your legends and lore and everything is crap.
Yeah.
Like I found that more interesting as the Ogle story as opposed to like the zombie Stefan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same with the zombie Stefan. But I found it interesting how when he does kill Seta, and she's so driven. I guess her culture, it's so ingrained within them to be for this prophecy, to like be driven by this prophecy, right? And the way she dies, how she just says like, "Oh, I didn't see this coming," and she just kind of accepts it. Just thought that was interesting.
The one scene I don't know if I felt totally satisfied though was Nail with Valdraken at the end, because Valdraken's revealed as the dragon, and then we get that, and Nail saved his life, and they were, at one point I remember in The Blackest Heart he regarded him as like his only friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I got the emotional kind of release from those two characters at the end like I would have liked.
Yeah.
But the Vale are still just so, I don't know, I just love the enigmatic nature of them and just so interesting. And I thought that was a great reveal though, that Valdraken was kind of the master manipulator. I honestly didn't see that one coming.
I didn't see it coming, and I think that's part of what in a way it's a great reveal because I didn't see it coming, but at the other time it's like, well, okay, but the motivations and character that you've been building, I guess he's just a great con man, because that's one of the subversions that didn't quite work for me, because you had built up a character that I thought was going a certain way, he went a different way, and that subversion, again, I'm not sure if I totally was happy with where he ended up, but at the same time, I love the whole long con story, so it had to be somebody, so it's like these chips started to fall, and it's like, oh man, I thought I kind of liked him, and it's like, I'm gonna have to live with it for a while actually to kind of maybe come to grips with where some of the character motivations shifted and changed, which is, kind of, I think, a pretty amazing thing when a writer challenges me like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I again, another great question for Brian would be, if he knew that Santa was going to die, and when he decided who was going to be the one to do it and how she was going to die, because I think there's a lot of different ways that could have played out, and maybe it did in his mind. But I think it'd be a great question for him, for sure.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I'm curious if he's, a plotter or a pantser, the gardener or the architect, which he falls into. I suspect most of them are plotters.
Yeah.
Most of them that write epic length fantasy, because you kind of have to.
You gotta be.
And with mystery involved. I mean,
Yeah,
I think pantsing a mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? But
that's true. The mystery writers are the best plotters. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and he did so much of that so well, just the misdirection of everything. So that's probably true. I also wonder with all the religion, he grew up in Utah a lot of the time, and that's a very religious state. And I wonder how much of growing up there kind of shaped some of the themes of religion in this book, because I'm sure they had to have.
Probably so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a question.
I think that's exact. Daniel, thanks for saying what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Because even that point, to circle back to Galt, a character that I thought was on this great redemption arc, and then just reverts back to this stone cold killer, as soon as Fire Absolution hits, and just turns into something that we thought he was not going to be. And I guess that's kind of like the Joe Abercrombie thing, is like human beings say they can change, but they can't change. So I'm just going to embrace that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm very interested to hear your guys' opinions on that scene where things have kind of ended, the battling has stopped, and you see Tala basically go around asking, asking like people if they renounce their god, and if not, they get slain. What did you guys think of that?
Dark.
Yeah.
That was so dark.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like, I said, I mean, I don't know why I keep going to Spinal Tap on this thing. I guess because it's so metal, right, Usman? But you're saying like it goes to 11. This goes to 11. It's like that reminded me of like, like the album cover. It's like, how more black could it be? And the answer is none more black. And it's like humanity had to drop that freaking far for them to start to realize how far they've dropped and pull their ass out of the ditch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the point where it could get none more black. I mean, that was just...
Yeah, I mean, she's basically the surviving ruler at this point. And again, we got to go back to the fact that she's like 16 or 17 years old and trying to establish a dominant presence as the ruler. And that happened to be her first enacting of law. And yeah, that was pretty it seemed out of character for her for the most of the trilogy of the Tala that we knew.
Yeah.
But maybe that is who she thought she needed to be at that point without without any family members, remaining.
Right. But at that point, Brian, aren't you? I mean, I think we're programmed from reading epic fantasy. At that point where you're getting close to the wrap up, you're like, who's the light? Who's the hope? Who's it going to pull all this back together? And
Dookie.
Tala was who was left on the board.
Yeah.
You still have Dookie.
Dude, Dookie, you're right. I should have stuck with Dookie because it wasn't Tala.
It was not Tala.
Yeah, I think a writer that's not afraid of embracing the darkness and kind of the realism would have tried to have a happier, brighter ending.
Yeah,
with Tala, and I like that Durfee kept it dark.
Oh,
there were several times in the book, like actually the scene where John Draylen was killed, where I go in and I'm thinking, I hope he doesn't shy away from this.
No.
Because it was one of those, like, it's in a Spades. She should be able to kill, like, every single one of these people easily. Mm-hmm. And he didn't disappoint. He was very consistent with, I guess, just his authorial intents at just being brutal with it. And I like that at the end.
Yeah.
And I mean, that can lead us into the last chapter is, we did see Tala regret those actions and realize, like, what am I if my first action as a ruler is to just start killing people? But my favorite aspect of that last chapter was twofold. I liked seeing Tala feel alone and feel isolated, but then I also liked seeing Hawkwood step in to be kind of that counselor, that mentor figure, probably sheerly out of love for her sister. And I kind of like that. So there was like before
and guilt of the mother.
There was a little bit, just a little nugget of positive.
Yeah, we got there. No, we finally got there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did enjoy that.
We finally got there when getting there became a subversion. Like he had buried us in so deep of a frickin' coal mine that you couldn't see anything from the darkness and the dusk. Then you finally got to the light because it was a subversion of everything he laid down. So he did it to you again. And then he did it at the very end when he turned Inna Spades into a religious figure.
So let's talk about that.
Like that was the part where I was like, all right, fair play, Brian. Fair play, man.
For me, that's why this is a 5-star series.
Yeah.
So 3 epilogues, and we get a new epigraph from something we've never heard of, the Albrecht of Galt, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then we get the story of Gallows Haven being so we get a little bit of closure for those characters. We see some world building, what's going to happen next. Next chapter, we get another epigraph, another new religious text, and we see a different. And then the last one, of course, was Nail and Krista. And there's a little bit of hope with them maybe connecting as they go try to find Stefan. But when Inna Spades mentions that she's just going to start writing religious texts, I mean, so perfect for that character, first of all. Like, this is what she would do. She just wants to blow things up.
Yeah.
Even if she's not around to see it, it doesn't matter. She's going to do this, and you just see this is how it all started. So she's going to start these differing religious texts. She's going to write these things, lay these bombs that are going to go off in centuries. And I'm like, this is brilliant because it tied everything together so well. I mean, it tied the whole thematic of the themes of the religious conflicts and how the whole thing was a con. It just tied it into the epilogue so well. And that's what I talked about in my, well, I was spoiler free, but when I talked about my mini review, I talked about there's an aspect of this book I can't stop thinking about. For me, that's it.
Yeah.
It's that, okay, these religions hundreds of years later were all started by one psychopath,
right,
who just wanted to mess with people.
right,
or who just, it's like, I'm a complete psycho, but I can't do worse than that I just lived through.
The cycle continues.
The Book of Enna, right?
So good. I mean, I obviously raved about it. I love that aspect of the end.
Guys, we've talked about how metal this book is, but I haven't even shared the most metal moments for me. So,
all right.
So we say it's metal, but here we go. First of all, the deaths, right? There were two deaths in particular that was like Game of Thrones level for me from the show that I watched. I never thought I'd be able to experience something like that again, but this book hit it home. So Jondralin's death, like you mentioned, that was one of them.
Yeah.
The other was Spiderwood's death when he was when he fought Hammerfist, and Hammerfist just smashed his head in.
Yeah,
right.
To a pulp.
But that was what that was like what Josh was saying. There was a couple of deaths, like he subverted you again because this is going to be one of those epic battles. What happened? It's over.
Yeah.
Right.
Wait,
and if it was going to be quick, you didn't think Hammerfist had a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if it was going to be, over in a minute, it was for sure going to be Spiderwood winning. Yeah, that part blew me away. I wasn't even sure if it was real afterwards. I was like, well, if I flip, a few pages down, maybe he's not taking that back. Yeah.
But then to continue, his body's set on fire, and Hammerfist starts roasting a sausage over his burning corpse. That's metal. Certified metal right there.
Yeah.
That, and lastly, the scene where the Bloodwood horse just bites the snout off of that other horse, just bites its face off, and it just dies there, writhing in pain. That was metal.
Yeah. No, there was visceral violence. There were serious pockets of just visceral ooginess throughout all three books.
Yeah, he didn't flinch.
No.
That's the thing. He just went for it, and it was consistent in all three books.
Yeah.
And didn't Jovan pick up his arm, if I'm remembering it right? Didn't he have his arm severed, and then he picked up his own arm?
You're right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I've never read that before. And he just reached over and picked up his arm. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's no shock there, I suppose.
Well, or like when Galt, it was book 2, but when Galt killed those people with the severed arm.
With the arm,
right.
Yeah. Like, what the, Jesus Christ.
Metal.
Absolutely. All right, so what have we missed?
Get well soon, Brian.
Yeah. Absolutely.
No doubt, for sure. It's just such a tremendous series. And I'm really, really optimistic that when his health makes a full recovery, we get more books. And whether it's in this universe or anywhere else, even if it's out of genre, if it's mystery, if it's thriller, because the guy reads everything. He could write historical fiction. It wouldn't matter. But he's absolutely one of my favorite authors after these 3 books. So yeah, hoping we get more for sure.
Yeah,
No,
it's
this is a
weird
unique series.
Yeah, to track, you enjoy the work and you kind of track an artist's journey, and it's like, well, I was watching his videos saying, this surgery usually doesn't work, and they were very, bleak, explaining what I was going through. And it's like, you got more books to write, brother. That's
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
that's why it worked. I mean, this could be one of those pivotal moments in an artist's life where he comes back and he just, brings a magnum opus to us that he surprises himself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure hope so. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more too, because I can say what I want about this series, but it stands on its own. I can't place it. I can't relate it to anything. I can't it's very, very unique, and it's always going to hold a place in my mind and in my heart for that.
Yeah.
Just being so unique.
Yeah, I remember Laura, Fantasy Awash, was saying, well, what's it kind of like? And it's like, I honestly tried to think of something for Laura, and I couldn't come up with anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think his writing is a lot like Robert Jordan's as far as a writing style, where it's very readable, sometimes a little repetitive or overly descriptive, but I like it. I mean, but it's very clear and it reads very fast. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but it's definitely a whole lot darker than most of the stuff in the Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, just like the first book. I mean, you go back to
Jenko's dad. Yeah.
And then Liz Hen put the daggers in his arms, right?
Yeah, she mashed him in after they tarred his arms.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's dark. Well, anyway, I think this is a good time to wrap it up. I think we've had a really good discussion today. Once again, those of you that may catch this on the replay, I have Brian Lee Durfee's GoFundMe in the description below. If you've enjoyed his videos at any point, and if you've enjoyed these books, besides, of course, buying the books and telling people all about them, writing reviews, that kind of thing, I'm sure any little assistance you can give for his medical bills for what he's going through would be amazing. So I want to thank my guests. This has been amazing. Usman and John talking all three books. I've enjoyed so much just here as well as in the Discord. I want to thank Budget Brian Lee Durfee, Brian from Belltube, joining us today as
Stepping in at the 0 hour.
But yeah, it's been a lot of fun reading these the past 3 months, and I'm just appreciative of you guys having these discussions, because for me, I found one of the most fun things about BookTube is when you get together and you talk about the books. People always illuminate things that you might have missed, and you get just a deeper understanding and a deeper appreciation for the books themselves. So yeah. I just want to thank all three of you guys personally for that in coming on the channel for all three of these discussions.
Oh man, it was such a blast. I looked forward to this every month, and to start the year, the first quarter of the year doing this, it's been a dream, man.
Yes, I'm honored, and this was a blast too. Love chatting with all you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. It was really fun.
And of course, if you don't already subscribe to these guys' channels, they're all three amazing. They're in the description below. But I want to thank all of you that were here live in the chat. You always add a lot to these discussions as well. And if you're watching the replay, drop us a line. And after that, go watch some of Brian's videos.
Yeah.
And we will all see you at the next one. Take care.
See ya.